Hi, everyone. I'm Matt Wool, the CEO of Acceleration Partners. Excited to be here talking to you about the wonderful world of AI with two experts from two different parts of the organization. Two parts of the ecosystem. Wrong word there. I'm going to let them introduce themselves in a second, but first, a little bit of housekeeping. We'll have plenty of time at the end for questions and answers, so please put your questions in the Q&A box in the webinar interface, and we will get to those at the end. I think we'll probably talk for about 40 minutes or so, and then we'll make sure we have plenty of times for questions. So get them in there, and we'll be happy to answer them. I'm going to just quickly introduce myself. Again, Matt Wool, CEO of Acceleration Partners. We are the world's largest performance partnerships agency, working globally with clients like Amazon, Apple, a number of others. Really excited to have my guests here today, so I'm going to let them introduce themselves. Jackie, we'll start with you.
Great. Hi, everyone. Nice to be here. I'm Jackie Goldstein. I'm the VP of Commerce at the New York Post. I work across the New York Post, Page Six, now California Post, and Decider, our other property focused in on entertainment. And yeah, as part of my job, I work, across sort of our whole commerce operations. So including our partnerships group, our editorial group, and our distribution group. And yeah, AI is a topic we talk about as a team probably every day. So yeah, excited to talk a little bit more about this today with you guys.
Great. Nick, over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. Hey, everyone. I'm Nick. I run growth marketing at Profound. Profound is the leading company in the AI visibility and content orchestration space. We raised a Series C funding round of $90 million, valuing us at $1 billion in February of this year. We work with 15% of the Fortune 500, helping them understand how AI talks about their brand and then how they orchestrate and build marketing agents to continue to grow and optimize their presence in AI search.
Great. Uh, Thank you both for being here. Really excited to dive in. Before we get into the real meat, what I like to do is actually start with a quick icebreaker. So the icebreaker question is going to be, what is one way that AI is transforming your life? And I will start. AI has transformed our household calendar. It used to be a nightmare for us to have to keep track of everything, and it was an endless source of frustration for my wife and my kids and I. AI makes it a lot easier. So now we know who's going where and who needs the car, which is the most important question these days. Nick, I'll start with you. What is one way that AI is transforming your life?
Yeah, that's an amazing one. Mine's a bit more work coded. Every week, my team and I, we each build a slide of kind of like what we're doing, like wins, where we're blocked, like what we're working on, what's coming next. And we used to do this all manually. And then instead, we built a skill in Claude that pulls from our calendar, our Slack, our email, and then automatically creates our slide in Google Slides automatically. And so it took like a 30-minute process and made it like a 5-minute thing, which is pretty cool.
Awesome. Jackie, what about you?
Yeah, all that sounds great. I've definitely been using it a lot at work for, different shortcuts or sort of like repetitive tasks that I find myself doing now and then. In my personal life, I actually love to use AI to interpret dreams. I feel
Yeah,
like it does a
that's a
really
good
good,
one.
yeah, I feel like it does a really good
AI Freud. I love it.
yeah, exactly. Um, I am like a very vivid dreamer and like love the dream world. So yeah, it's very fun and I think it does a pretty good job. But yeah, I mean I use it for a ton of things. Trip planning. I'm planning a trip to Italy this summer, so I've definitely been talking to ChatGPT and Claude a lot about that and Puglia, where I'm going. So yeah, it's been, a huge help in my life, personally and professionally.
Great. All right, so let's get into the real meat of it. So we all know that AI is rapidly reshaping commerce and consumer behavior, and we're really entering a new era for discovery. And it's not just changing how consumers discover products, but it's also redefining the path to purchase. So this is a really structural shift in how people search, evaluate, and decide what to buy. And we're seeing that discovery is no longer driven just by search engines, but now by AI models that curate, that synthesize, and that recommend in real time. And so the real shift that's happening here is that we're seeing now that sources of trust are changing and being used differently. And what we know is that AI doesn't create trust; it sources it. Editorially driven reviews, authentic creator insights that provide depth and credibility. That's what large language models are looking for right now, and they're helping brands earn both visibility and trust in this AI-driven discovery landscape. But at the same time, right, the ecosystem is a lot less predictable. With Google, we knew when an algorithm update was coming for the most part. It didn't happen every day. But what we're seeing with AI is that visibility can shift instantly, and things can change quite rapidly. So the question for brands is no longer just how do we rank? It's really, are we embedded in the sources that AI trusts and surfaces? So with that said, I'll start with you, Nick. From your vantage point, analyzing AI visibility, what has fundamentally changed in how brands are surfaced in AI-driven discovery?
Yeah, I think the one thing that brands kind of need to understand is that these shifts can happen literally overnight without any heads up from the foundation models themselves. OpenAI can come out with a new one, Anthropic can come out with a new either like update of Opus 4.5 to 4.6 or a whole step change. And these different model updates can truly fundamentally change how brands get recommended in AI search if the amount of times that the model searches the web changes, if its underlying training data set changes. And so in the past, Google was very communicative of algorithm changes for SEO, and OpenAI, Anthropic are not at that point yet, if they ever will be, if they can ever truly understand the impact of how these different models change. And so, um, if your citation and visibility can change overnight in some of these models, and you really have to keep a close eye on your visibility and find a good partner to make sure you're on top of those things. And so that's like the big thing I'm seeing. And then the second thing is the user agents that all of these foundational models use when they go crawl the web. All those user agents are tagged with different, they all have different behaviors like web search, retrieval, training, and you can monitor how often these user agents visit your website. And so recently, Anthropic just tagged Claude Code as having its own user agent. So if someone is using Claude Code and it goes and searches the web, you can see how many times that user agent hits your website, which if you're a company in the developer space, then that's just a really interesting metric to track.
Great, thank you. So Jackie, I mean, similar to you, but from the publisher side and from the editorial perspective, what changes are you seeing on how content is consumed or referenced in the AI-driven experience?
Yeah. I mean, I think all publishers are definitely seeing some traffic impact. Not only from AI, this has been going on with Google for a long time too, but this is sort of a new, thing that's been happening more and more over the past couple of years where we're, expecting impact. Again, this isn't really a new thing. There's been a lot of things kind of shifting, behaviors, whether it's more people consuming information from a publisher on social platforms, in AI, through, other whatever else might be out there. So, I think though, kind of like thinking about some of the things that Nick was saying, there's like kind of a little bit more unknown here for the publisher side. Um, so, we have like SEOs on our team that are like keeping us abreast of like, okay, there's an algorithm update coming out. Here's how it might affect us. It rolled out completely. Here's how it did affect us, etc. Whereas, we're kind of not as aware, as Nick said, things can sort of like change overnight. Um, I think for us in the commerce space, we, despite changes to traffic and traffic potentially, diminishing a little bit from information being right there for the consumer, we are still really excited about citations for our content and for our partners within these LLMs. And I think there's huge opportunities there. I think that it's interesting because, obviously with the affiliate model being last click, traffic has always been important. How will that start to shift? Um, as traffic changes, I think we'll talk about that a little bit more later on. But it's interesting, like ChatGPT actually is in our top 5 traffic sources right now, to our shopping content. So, we do see some behaviors of people wanting to double down, see more. We are a highly cited publisher. I think actually I just took a look in Profound today. We're in the top 5. So very excited about that, especially for certain topics. But yeah, it's definitely an evolving space. So yeah, definitely a lot of shifts to kind of how we're getting traffic, but we're excited about the citations that we are seeing.
Great. And to your point, we'll talk a little bit about measurement a little bit later on. So Nick, I guess back to you. So when the LLMs determine which brands to elevate in their in their results, how important are third-party validation and publisher authority signals?
They're massively important. And so we have a data set that I just had my research team pull a list of how much data that we truly have. And our data set right now is 27 billion AI citations, which is kind of a crazy number. So, based on that data set, we know that 95% of all citations come from earned media sources or social media or content that does not live on your own .com website. And so in that are review sites, social, like I said, earned media. Your competitors are also kind of in that amount too. So 5% of all citations you directly control on your .com, and then the other 95% are all third party. And so that means that when someone asks AI, what are the best women's running shoes to run the New York City Marathon, that if you're Nike, you have some control over that, but then 95% of that is kind of up to these other third party validation signals. And so that's the really interesting thing to know. And yeah, there's a lot of opportunity to go control and own that space. And if you're internal, if you're an SEO, if you're someone who's owning an AI search program at your company, I think the the impetus for you then is how do you go collaborate with your PR teams, your comms, your social teams, and just kind of go and really build a more cohesive strategy to think not just what can we do on our website, but how can we lean on partners to go also drive citations from third party sources too.
Right. It really forces the breaking down of organizational silos, right? Because it's not just about the SEO team anymore. It's about all these different parts of the organization working together, which
Yeah,
is fascinating.
exactly.
So Jackie, I guess given that, right, within that, what makes a brand, more reference worthy in the editorial ecosystem? What separates brands that earn coverage from those that don't?
Yeah, so I think one of the ways we think about it, New York Post, our other properties, like many other publishers, we sort of in our commerce content realm have a couple of different like content types that we focus in on. So we do a lot of deal content when there's a sale going on. We do reviews of products. We do best of lists where we're talking about, basically mini reviews of multiple products, gift guides, trending items that are, kind of just interesting, so on and so forth. Um, and so, like I said, you kind of tend to see these types at a lot of different publishers. But I think for us, we kind of think about different partners in different types of ways. So, obviously, depending on the category, how much coverage have we done on a certain type of category? We see deal content as kind of like a really easy gateway if we haven't covered like, let's say a brand comes to us today and we've never really proven out coverage of them. My team is very focused in on the data. So we are really looking at, how is the audience reacting from an affiliate standpoint? How many clicks is this driving? How many sales is it, converting to? What's the EPC, et cetera? which is like, those are strong signals for us for, okay, let's, think about how do we expand from here? How do we double down? So I guess what I would say to, folks from the brand side, who are listening in is like, if you are trying to get more citations for your brand, and you want to start working with publishers more, and maybe you haven't done much of it, or maybe, there are some publishers you haven't really scratched the surface with, I would just pay close attention to the types of, content that the publisher has done before. If there are, so like, let's say you're, not Nike, but a different shoe brand, in the sort of like athletic sneaker realm. If you notice a certain publisher doing other content about running shoes, comfortable shoes for travel, like whatever, I would kind of try to pay attention for some of those, and then, kind of pitch your brand through there. Kind of thinking about what's relevant, because I think a lot of publishers really are, again, this kind of came up as a very popular little collection of letters, a few years ago, mostly through Google, but I think it's very relevant here for AI too. But there's the EEAT concept, which is experience, expertise, trust, authority, and trustworthiness. So, like, look out for those things to see like how much coverage on certain topics there are, and then kind of, go from there for what might be a good publisher target for you.
Awesome. So given all the kind of underlying stuff we're talking about here, foundational stuff, I guess the big question, right, for brands doing partnership marketing is in this new world, how should brands be thinking about their partnership strategies, right? Would love to get your perspective. So Nick, we'll start with you. What would be your answer to that question?
Yeah, I think referencing my 95% stat earlier, that 95% of all AI citations are from third-party sources, that I think it means that partnerships become a really key angle to drive further discoverability in AI search and really extending your reach beyond your website. I think a lot of marketing teams get bogged down in thinking about what surfaces they own. Like, oh, I control my social media profile, I control my website. Those are kind of like the only opportunities I can use to, or only surface areas I can optimize on. And I think partnerships and third parties become really, really slept on. And so I think winning here becomes just as much an element of what relationships and partnerships can you tap to grow. So, for example, we work with lots of different marketing agencies here at Profound, from small ones all the way up to the really, really large holding companies. And from my perspective as a marketer, those are all opportunities for us to collaborate on content together. And so it could be webinars like this, it could be how do we write case studies or articles together? Like, can I publish an article on their website? Maybe it's I do all the work of I'll write everything and send it to them and say, hey, can you publish this, and make it a very easy lift on their end. And so I think it comes down to, once you know that 95% stat, it kind of changes your brain to think, okay, how do I start to leverage these partnership opportunities and use them to increase the surface area that we can drive citations from?
Great. Jackie, what would you say?
Yeah, I agree with everything Nick is saying. Publishers can be a great opportunity, to provide more visibility for your brand and LLMs, especially through commerce content. Everything I was saying before about sort of paying attention to when it seems like a publisher has some authority, in that type of category, that you fall into too. And I think also, going off of what Nick was saying, this is kind of one of those areas where, like, you know, people working with AI becomes really interesting because, relationship building can also be a hugely important part of that too. Building these relationships with publishers. Publishers in the commerce space get like, I mean, oh my God, I probably get like 500 or so emails a day, like maybe more. Like, I'm getting hit from every angle too in my position. So, it's a lot of brand pitches, basically like different groups representing brands. There's a lot of vendor stuff. There's a lot of other random things. But just figure out like how can you stand out. And I think relationship building is a really key part of that too.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So I guess last question for this section is around something that I've been thinking a lot about, which is that in the affiliate world, it's long been kind of a mantra that high quality affiliate programs work both with large web publishers like the Post, but also with high quality longer tail publishers. And I think that there's some question kind of in this new world that we're talking about what happens to the long tail of publishers, because ultimately if the LLMs are looking for high levels of authority to surface results, it seems like that could consolidate results around large publishers, but it could also be that they want to say, hey, like we want different perspectives, and that might be actually a check in the column for the long tail. So, what do you guys think is going to happen to kind of the larger affiliate ecosystem? Obviously, there are tens or hundreds of thousands or millions of publishers out there that have a vested interest in this. What's going to happen in this new AI-driven search landscape? Jackie, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think that, we will see what happens. Obviously very evolving space, but I do think that there are good opportunities for all different types of publishers. Whether you are a large publisher with a lot of authority in a lot of different types of topics, maybe there's, more sort of manpower, creating content for that publication. Or if you are niche, but you are so hyper focused on a topic and really have that expertise that, the EEAT again, on certain types of topics and categories. So, I think and I hope, just for the broader publishing world, that there are good opportunities for both. And I feel like there should be. But yeah, that's kind of how I see it.
Thanks. Nick,
Yeah.
what would you say?
Yeah, from it's hard to predict the future, but what I'm seeing right now is I've dove into a lot of profound data, and specifically I've looked at kind of like the affiliate publisher space for online mattresses, which is a very affiliate heavy, very kind of competitive space. And the conclusion I found is that affiliates, they've become kind of the gatekeepers of AI visibility. Of what I mean by that is all of these affiliates in that space, they publish listicles, the wire cutters of the world, whatever. And if your brand is on that listicle, then what I found is that you're recommended very often in AI search. But if you're not, then you're almost invisible. So I've seen this from like large publishers all the way down to small ones too. And so if you have a domain or you're a small publisher and you know that you're being cited very often, I think that gives you some amount of control when you go to work with brands. You can say, hey, I own this domain, this article. I know it's heavily cited, and if you're not on this page, then you're really missing out on a chance to be recommended in AI search when someone who's has a terrible mattress, slept terribly last night, is on their last leg, their final straw. Like, I need a new mattress. Like, I'm a side sleeper. I weigh this much. I live in New York City, blah, blah, blah. Like, what is a new mattress? And if you don't get recommended there, then you're out of luck. And so I think affiliates are really well positioned right now.
Great. Yeah, this is where I guess the having all that data is super helpful, right? You can actually not just conjecture, but you you can check.
Yes.
Great. So we're gonna transition a little bit away from kind of the ecosystem into measurement, which came up a little bit earlier and is obviously a very hot topic and critical to both brands and publishers who are trying to navigate here. So, I think everyone recognizes that we're moving into a zero-click reality where influence is happening earlier in the journey. It's happening inside, LLM generated answers. A lot of times it's happening before users even visited a website. And this definitely creates challenges, right? A lot the signals that brands have traditionally relied upon, most notably the click, are becoming less visible. And look, clicks still matter. No one's saying that they don't matter, but they're just not the full story anymore, and that's probably going to continue to evolve. So I'd love to dig into this with each of you. So starting with you, Nick, like how do you think brands should think about incrementality in this AI influence journey where so much might happen before there's any click to anybody?
Yeah, I think what we're seeing is a shift of search moving away from a performance channel into a like brand channel. And so, but this changes also is the metrics that matter. And so, clicks are still important. You can still measure clicks, but also you need to look at how often is your brand mentioned in AI search for a given set of prompts that you track, how often your brand website is cited, which is really a measure of how much you're kind of controlling the narrative in your own space, how much is your brand POV being pulled through. And then finally, when it comes down to it, if you're in a 3, 4, 5 conversation deep chat with ChatGPT, when it comes down to that last conversation of like, what do I buy? Do I buy this or do I buy that? Are you the recommended brand or not? And so I think those metrics are new things that SEOs and marketing teams kind of need to pull in as they're looking to kind of measure and pull through incrementality in this new channel. And so you can still measure clicks from AI search. There are relatively small amounts. You should also be measuring how often AI user agents are visiting your website. And so you can use tools like Profound to go and do this, because when you search, you type a prompt into ChatGPT, in real time, it's sending out user agents to go search the web, pull in new data. And so you can look at those user agent visits as almost a measure of how often people are looking for your brand or service in AI search. And it's a really, really good source of information. And then finally, if you're in B2B, I always recommend having a "How did you hear about us?" question on your contact sales form. It's such a rich source of data. And my very strong POV on this field is that it should be open text. It should be required. It should have a character limit, a minimum character count of 5 characters. So you can't just type like A or X. You need force people to type in words, and you will be so shocked at what people type into that. I'm like, oh, I found you on a podcast or a webinar or this newsletter, and you won't know unless you ask. And so those are all the ways I would kind of start to measure incrementality for AI search.
Great advice there. Jackie, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, Nick covered so much good advice there. But if I can try to like add any other like good little things to be thinking about, one of the things that I think I'm thinking about a lot is kind of just like especially in affiliate marketing, we think a lot about the funnel, and typically affiliates always been bottom of the funnel. I think with the rise of chat AI, the funnel is sort of like changing its shape a little bit. So, I think that it's, you know, awareness and action can kind of like be in a very similar type of place. So yeah, so I think just like, all of the measurement tips that Nick kind of just recommended, and figuring out ways that you can just lean in further with partners, as we've kind of discussed earlier, on this panel. I think just will continue to be really important for all brands. And, obviously, as this is an evolving space, there will be a lot of like unknowns. Sometimes operating in the unknown can be there can be advantages and wins from that, but it can also be a little frustrating. But I think that it's good to just kind of understand and measure as much as you can with tools like Profound
Yeah.
and others. But yeah, I think that's what I'd say on that.
Jackie, I actually have one quick follow-up question for you, if that's okay, which is like, given all of this, are you seeing any changes in like the underlying business model, either at the Post or otherwise? Obviously, commission has always been, the lifeblood of the affiliate world. Like, is that starting to change, or are you seeing people thinking about that in a different way, or do you think it hasn't really gotten to that point yet?
I want it to get to that point quicker. I think that there's a lot of like interesting ways that maybe we can be thinking about this, across, publishers, our partners, our agencies that we work with, and also the affiliate networks too, and, other platforms like Profound, et cetera. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think that like for the partnership side of things, it's interesting. Like, one thing that I'll say is like in the past couple of years, so I've been in the affiliate space probably now like maybe 15-ish years. I'm not sure. I've been at the Post though for 7. And earlier in our time here, the Post has always been really strong in the SEO space. And I think we would get a lot of outreach from partners being like, hey, like, how can you help us with SEO? We want to partner with you. SEO is our top priority. More and more and more and more, that conversation has shifted almost entirely to AEO, GEO, whatever people are calling it these days. Um, so I think that like the model will need to change in some way. With the changes to, obviously like publisher content can be cited, but the clicks will likely be diminished. If they're getting the information that they need there about a brand, they may just go right to that brand if they're satisfied with the information. Like I said, ChatGPT is in our top 5 referrals for commerce content traffic. So we actually are getting a pretty good amount of traffic from that source. But it's obviously very different. So yeah, I mean, I think that whether it's I'm not exactly sure what the answer is, but I think that something probably will need to shift for publishers who are in this space, and it's obviously a commercial space, to be able to continue to do more in affiliate, but however that kind of like evolves will be seen.
That's the many billion dollar question.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, so we're gonna move on to our closing question, and then we'll go to the Q&A. So this is kind of looking more to the future. But for both of you, and Nick, I'll start with you. For brands that move quickly versus those that wait, what can be achieved over the next 12 months, and what's at stake, right? What are the odds here?
Yeah, I think that every brand on the planet right now will deeply care about how AI talks about their product, brand, or um, or service, and we think that this will only become more important as usage shifts towards, conversational AI LLM platforms like that. We already know it's a boardroom level conversation. Like Jackie said, everyone's coming to them asking about AEO and GEO and like how can you partner in this area. So this is fundamentally really important. We also believe that every marketing team on the planet will use AI and AI agents to do great work faster. And so those two things, it's really the teams and companies that move now will have a significant advantage and head start. And it's the velocity that you're building right now is how do you enable your teams to move faster? How do you use these tools to do more than you ever could before? And you can really build a strong competitive advantage, not just in traffic and leads and referrals from these systems, but how your team is enabled with AI to do much better work faster as well. And so I think it's you get both sides of the employee enablement and your company getting to like reap the rewards of being the most recommended brand in AI
Mhm.
search.
Great, thank you. And over to you, Jackie.
Yeah. As always during this panel, I agree with everything Nick said. The other thing that I'll add is, I think that people can adapt more quickly than companies because, they're just an individual person and it's easier for them to test something out. So more and more and more people will be interacting with these, LLMs and getting more information from them, using them more as search spaces for information about products, for information about their dreams, for information about anything. So, I think that if you kind of keep that in mind, you should also think about, okay, like how like things are moving quickly over here. How can my company now kind of like step up over here? I think that smaller companies, I've worked at larger companies. I've like the Post is quite a huge operation, but I've worked at much smaller companies too before. And change can be pretty easy. It can be easier to implement change at smaller companies. So I think that smaller companies may have an advantage here, for rolling out processes, starting to pivot and shift and make this more and more and more part of their strategies, if it's not already, or really doubling down. Um, so yeah, I think that's an interesting thing to kind of think about. But obviously, large companies have it great too because they, might have the means for more tooling and, more support to, try to move as aggressively as they can here. So yeah, I think, definitely makes sense to, this has been, there's been a rise in this for a few years now, and it's been a big conversation. So, there's no time like the present.
Get at it. Well, great. Thank you. That brings us to the end of the main session. We do have a few questions, so I'm going to dive into them. So the first one is, brands have traditionally wanted control over messaging. How does that mindset need to shift when so much of AI visibility is shaped by third parties? So it's a really good question. If you guys don't mind, I think maybe I'll take the first stab at this one, and then please jump in if you like. But I think this is a really interesting question because there's actually been a pretty big difference in a lot of ways between like how affiliate marketing has operated and how creator marketing has operated. Like in the influencer world, one of the mantras I think for the brands that do really well is like give the creators, the brief, but give them the latitude to be creative and like do the thing that is what they do, because that's where the authenticity comes from and that's where the value comes from. My opinion is I think that's actually a little bit more where this is going to go now. It's probably going to be less in a brand's interest to dictate or want to dictate, exactly what publishers are saying, and more in their interest to have more publishers saying, more authentic and high value things kind of organically. But I would be curious to hear what you guys have to say.
Yeah, I'll jump in next on that one. I totally agree. I think that, a lot of the publishers and creators in this space, um, want to drive success because then they see success. So, I think that they are thinking, what can I do? What is my voice here? And Nick, kind of going back to something you were saying about like all the mattress sites out there and, thinking about someone doing a search, I'm a side sleeper, whatever else I'm in New York, so maybe my apartment's tiny and hot all the time or freezing all the time. But like, there's all these things that, each of those little things that might be like a way that someone is thinking about a product or a problem they have and how a product can solve it. Um, all of those things might be like a specialty of a certain publisher to kind of speak of. And that might not be in your kind of like default brand messaging. So yeah, I think that um having a little more openness to sort of letting the publishers and the creators do their thing, I think is will benefit.
Yeah. To add on, and I agree with what Jackie said too, is that brands need to understand that they don't have control anymore. You're losing control. There's maybe a universe where even your own website becomes even less important, and that is a reality that brands need to reckon with too. And so I think once you embrace that, then the next steps become a lot more obvious. It's how do you work with partners? How do you make sure your messaging is consistent? How do you build AI agents that check and make sure your messaging is consistent? I guarantee you there are brands here that have a different tagline on their website versus their Twitter profile versus LinkedIn versus Instagram versus TikTok versus YouTube. Like I guarantee there's someone who is misaligned there versus like their G2 profile or Trustpilot or whatever review site there is. And so step one is just audit all of your surface areas and make sure that all the places you control the messaging on is aligned to what you want to go to market with. And then step two is how do you make sure that proliferates to all your partners? And I think that's a new muscle that brands will need to build.
Great. All right. The next one is a little specific, so we'll see if we can get to the heart of it. So, as a retailer who carries a lot of the same products as a number of competitors, how do we shift from pushing products, since many retailers carry the same products, and focus more on why our brand is the place to buy those products to make us more likely to be cited when LLMs are asked where to buy? Um, I mean, Jackie, I don't, there may be one kind of to start with for you in terms of like how a publisher like the Post would help support that.
Yeah, for sure. We have done content over the years on the best places to buy XYZ. And usually we find ourselves talking about different types of factors, like maybe, let's say it's like a fashion category brand. We might talk about the variety of the selection. We may talk about how often new products are coming in. We may talk about how, the price is really good. We may talk, there's so many different things. So I think that also one of the reasons that we got excited about that type of angle was we were actually seeing really interesting data that was sort of showing a really like an interest in our recommendations, but not always an interest in the specific products we were recommending. So we kind of were like, let's try to like take it a level up and focus in on this. So I think there's a lot of good ways to go about that and ways to kind of talk to publishers and creators about your brand and the why. And I think there's a lot of good content that can be created from that, like that we've done ourselves.
Yeah, I think yeah, you have to become a brand that people like a retailer that people want to buy from. Like the one that comes to mind to me is Erewhon. It's kind of like very expensive like a grocery store chain that yeah, is known for having high quality natural good products. Like you need to have a niche and be able to build, love with your target customer there. Like, oh, why would I go buy something here versus, Target or Walmart or whatever? It's, it's because you know that this place carries the brand and you want to be affiliated with, you're a person who buys things from this place. I think that's kind of underrated and really powerful.
Great, thank you. All right. The next one is with AI models updating so frequently, how should brands think about long-term versus short-term? Is there a difference or is there not a difference? Is kind of the same thing going to be valuable for both? So, Nick, why don't we start with you on that one?
Yeah, really funny timing. Anthropic an hour ago just released Opus 4.7. So that's my whole
You
point is
heard it
this
here. Great.
exactly. This stuff just comes out and
Yeah,
you have no heads up. You don't know what changed. And so I think internally like, you need to think long term and start to build the muscle and systems and programs and reporting around this, but you need to operate on a short term basis, knowing that these things can literally change overnight. And I think that's kind of the right mindset of do things now, but build long term systems and processes. And so, because you never know when Anthropic's going to update their model, overnight.
Jackie, anything to say or did Nick say it?
I feel like Nick said it.
Okay,
I guess,
perfect.
yeah. The only thing I'd say is like,
Yeah.
it's important if you're like for us as the New York Post, like we are constantly like pivoting and testing and we may try something for like we may try two articles on something, one article on something. We don't see the performance we want, we kind of move on. Like we're doing a lot of quick things, but ultimately at the end of the day, our like larger strategy has remained fairly similar and like what we want to accomplish has remained fairly similar. So, I think like obviously it probably goes without saying, but like continuing to do the good work and like, continuing to be true to your brand, while still, as Nick was saying, paying attention to your strategy in this space, how you can really optimize for this space, short and long term.
Right. But I mean, I think what I'm hearing from both of you though is that ultimately like doing the right thing for the brand and creating value for the customer is gonna be good, right, in AEO either way, right? So if you focus on those things, you should come out okay in addition to obviously some of these other tactics that we're talking about. Great. So I think we're pretty much at time. Nick Lafferty from Profound, Jackie Goldstein from the New York Post. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time, insights, and expertise. I want to thank all our attendees. We'll be emailing out the video to everyone once it processes. Thank you for your time. Again, I'm Matt Wolf from Acceleration Partners. It's been great to have you here, and hopefully I'll talk to you all soon.
Thank you.
Bye.